Welcome to Signature Required. It is intended for Tennesseans by Tennesseans.
What makes them tick? What lights their fire?
We're pulling forward people that, unless you listen to this interview, you might not know a thing about them. The heart of a Tennessean, the volunteer state, is serve, and we do so largely without self-promotion.
And these are genuine people that get up every day and want to make art, or want to educate the nations, or want to have a heart of love in a way that makes a difference.
Learn from 50 years of experience, take a nugget away, and then go share it with a friend.
We have a very special treat. We have Becca Stevens from Thistle Farms. Becca, you are an author, speaker, Episcopal priest, and social entrepreneur. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. So for anybody living under a rock in the Nashville area, per se, can you tell us what Thistle Farms is?
I'd be happy to. So Thistle Farms is a global movement now for women's freedom. And it started right here in Nashville, about a mile down the road from where we are, with one house. And we welcomed 5 women to come in off the streets and just figure out what they needed for healing. And it was all women who had criminal histories of trafficking, sexual exploitation, addiction. All of them had served time in prison. And so it was just like, can we do better as a community? And can we focus on a small group of women and really put resources in and make a difference? So fast forward almost 30 years and, it's hundreds and hundreds of women.
It seems like the superpower of Thistle Farms, both what you're doing with women in the houses that you make and bring them into, as well as the products that you produce and the jobs that you create. The secret sauce seems to be community, that it's not just one person, that it's women walking alongside women, women helping women. And I would love to speak a little bit into, you're very open about your past and how your past has informed the work that you do. But was there a moment for you where you were thinking, I know that this is part of my past, but I'm not going to let it define me like people think. I'm going to let it define me in a positive way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moments. I think for everybody on that journey that's trying to move from brokenness into kind of compassion or action, that there's a lot of different moments, and I think you're right to begin with that. But I don't think it's a secret sauce. I think we try to blast it into the world that community is the entity for healing, that there's individual moments, but really when women come together, that's when the magic happens. That's when the sum is greater than its parts. But really, honestly, when I got to the place in my life where I knew that I wanted to start safe community for women, to find all the things that they needed on this journey to healing, it was because so many people have been kind to me over the years. I started off, it was really rough. My dad was killed when I was 5 by a drunk driver. The head of the church where we were going abused me, and it was some hard years in there. And I got lost along the way, but it was really, there was so much kindness in some of the communities I found myself in, and there was so much forgiveness, so much love. And it was like, that's what I wanted. I wanted this radical hospitality where people could come in and feel loved and not be judged and not have to say, like, you have to do X, Y, and Z before you can be here, or if you do X, Y, and Z, you have to leave. But just like, let's just be together. So yes, community is at the center of it, and community as the oldest entity this whole world knows for healing has got to be where people run to, not walk. Go run to it if you want to find, and it's got to be a safe community, but if you want to find, like, what is it that helps me figure out what my purpose is, what helps me see a vision, what helps me find the resources, it's community.
You say in your book that it is easier to say that no one knows me than to let yourself be known. And there is this tension, right, between trying to build a safe community and letting yourself be vulnerable. And when you've been through some stuff, being vulnerable, it's hard for everyone, but it's uniquely difficult to let it all show. So, can you talk a little bit about the power of vulnerability in community? And maybe you have words for people that just think, I don't have it in me. This is scarier than I thought it should be.
Well, I can give you a recent story where I learned that again, because again, I don't know that there's one moment or one time. I think we relearn this stuff
Mm,
all the time, and we have to be re-invited into a space that feels safe and to be vulnerable in that space so that we can change and love the world. But the most recent example, this is crazy, but we wanted to work with women in Bethlehem. This was a couple years ago. It was before the October 7th. And we wanted to work with women in Bethlehem and make chalices. So, that people hold wine in, people can do communion with. But the idea was we were working with these potters in Bethlehem that were doing beautiful work. And they were all about building up their community. The women were committed to that. And so that's when we go out and we invest and we work with artisans around the world. It's about investing in women so that they can do the healing work of community. All the data shows if you invest in women, you heal community. So how do we work with women who are the healers? So we started the conversations with the women in Bethlehem, and then October 7th happened, and I thought, oh, we'll never get these chalices, these beautiful, they're beautiful. They're white and blue. They're clay, fragile.
sure.
And then before Thanksgiving, I received about 10 boxes here at Thistle Farms. And they were huge boxes, and I didn't even know what it was. And we opened them, and it was the chalices from Bethlehem. They made it through a war zone. And it's when I noticed on the box that the universal symbol for fragile is a chalice. It's that red chalice with a little line through it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that the same thing that we say is the universal symbol for something that's fragile is also this cup that holds like grace. And that is, the symbol of all that is holy. And I have always been afraid of being vulnerable or being fragile. That wasn't part of my vocabulary growing up. And I was like, maybe it's my saving grace. Maybe the places where we are vulnerable will actually be the place that we find that saving grace.
Well, and I think truly loving someone is seeing all of the hot mess that they might be, what they might present, or withstanding the pushback that you will get, because all people are broken. And my husband and I call it kicking tires. Like, I am going to kick his tires to make sure he still loves me. And if he makes me mad, I will maybe fix it. But then I'm going to go back and kick the tires for a while and see if I can make him mad again, just to make sure we're good.
I thought you kicked the tires before you bought the car. You've already bought the car.
I bought the car and I still kick them on a very, very regular basis. But I think that's true love, is having a language and looking at him and be like, sister, I know that you are kicking my tires. I'm not going to take the bait. I don't love it, but I know that you're kicking my tires and I will love you anyway, you crazy, crazy lady. But it's my imperfections. It's my ability to come as my whole self and be like, I'm feeling vulnerable right now. I'm feeling overworked. My kids have worn me out. The community has worn me out. Do you still accept me? And that to me is true community. And that's one example. But how can we do that in the type of community that you've created? You have women coming in with so much that they have pulled into their lives. And most of it has happened from a young age and they don't know any different. How do you counsel them to let their imperfections show, and that through that true connection actually happens?
The women that come to Thistle Farms they're in touch with that stuff. That's nothing that I teach people.
They already know. Or
I mean,
maybe they
it's-
wouldn't be calling.
Right. I mean, can you imagine how brave it is? I mean, it's why in the world of trafficking, I don't love the idea of rescuing. I think it's a lot of self-rescuing. It's why I don't think anybody needs to pretend to be a hero for anybody else, because I think the world doesn't need a bunch of more heroes. It needs good hosts. And that the women get to be the hero of their own story, and I get to be the hero of my story, and you get to be the hero of your story. It's really beautiful.
And I think I'm going to paraphrase, but when I was listening to Practically Divine, you said,
That's
what?
so nice you did that.
Oh,
You listened to it?
I listened to both Love Heals and
Oh my
Practically Divine this month.
gosh.
I don't take for granted the opportunity to be in your space. You have a lot of people that want your time.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I think will impact me for a really long time that I've been unpacking in pieces is you said that we need less heroes and more hosts. You said we can be the best hosts at the intersection of our gifting and our conviction, between what we're gifted at or good at or love to do and the thing that breaks our heart.
Mm.
And that's the intersection of being a hostess.
Hmm.
So I'd love for you to talk about maybe even a story where you have seen in your life or a women you serve where they have found that intersection.
I think the idea of being a good hostess is intention. And things become beautiful when we give it the intention for, I hope they feel welcomed. I hope they feel loved. Like you can feel it, and that's my hope, is that when people come into this space and this community and we are hosting them, that they can feel the intention. And I don't know that the finery is required, but I do think also people can feel lavishness. So I do think there's something beautiful about offering people what they need so they can be full. But I will say this idea of being a good host where our gifts and our convictions come together. There was a woman that had, just a horrible background. She was actually born in Brazil and was in an orphanage where very inhumane things happened to her. And a couple came and adopted her from the U.S. And she came here as a 9 or 10-year-old. And then she ran away and got in trouble. And she was out on the streets and then in prison and came to us. And she felt so guilty and so bad about this gift that she'd been given as a kid that she couldn't accept, basically. That there was so much damage already in her life and she had to just run. About a year after she came, I had gone to Rwanda. And the women in Rwanda wrote letters to the women at Thistle Farms. And these were all women who had been convicted, who were maybe some of them survivors of the genocide there in 94, but some of them just very rough stuff. And the woman that I'm talking about that was here read one of those letters, and she was so mad on behalf of the woman that all this stuff had happened to in Rwanda. She was like, that's so sad. That's so hard. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened to her. And I was like, it happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
You have so much mercy for her, but you can't see that that's your story. Like y'all are sharing a story in very different languages, but it's the same theme. And all of a sudden she was able to see, like, I am convicted and I do have this ability to help. And I think that was the beginning of her being a pretty good hostess.
There's that.
Yeah, she could be a host at that point because she could feel like that, like, oh my gosh, this is happening to women. It wasn't just me. It's happening to women all over the world.
It is interesting how quick, I don't know if it's uniquely feminine. Sometimes I feel like it is, but how quick we are to fight on behalf of a sister or forgive the hard that they present to you because their past, while continuing to chain yourself with regret and unforgiveness. And it's just like super unfair. Why do we do these things to ourselves?
Yeah, right. I don't have no idea, and I don't have any idea why it is. The world is hard enough without us being hard on ourselves. Let's be gentle, and then maybe we can deal with the hardness out there better.
Do you find the women that come to Thistle Farms, are they by and large ready to forgive what maybe they perceive as their part in the life they've been living? Or do you think that takes a lot of time?
For me, at least, I can say, and it's been my experience with most of the women that I've served over the last 3 decades, is that just like there's not a moment of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a journey. It's not an event, it's a journey. And I think if people can kind of come to terms with the truth of the process of forgiveness, it's not like, I don't know if I can forgive them. It's like, well, let's just start the journey. I don't know if I can forgive myself, but let's just start. What does it look like to start that? And I think it's easier to see looking back like I forgave versus I will forgive. I think it's easier, oh, I forgave them. Like at some point I let that go, or I cut that cancer out of me and I was free. I'm freer now because I'm distanced from it. I have some perspective. I have some safety built around me.
Sure.
You know, all those things that make forgiveness possible. For most of the women, it's like forgiveness happens in stages along the way, but you get to revisit it as you go through other stages in your life. Oh my gosh, you know, I'm clean 3 years. I haven't been on the streets or in prison. And now I'm realizing that I had lost 10 years of income on the streets, right? Or 12 years or whatever it was. And like, you can't just make that up, and you start to see like there's still a cost that's being paid. I have to forgive that. Or this extended family where this abuse happened or this happened. Now they have children and the children want to come see me. Now I have to forgive that. You know, like it's not like one thing, because we have complicated lives that we get to revisit forgiveness all the time.
Darn it. Not the truth. It does feel like it comes in waves.
Yeah.
Kind of like how grief hits you in waves, and you never know when you're going to get like a soft wave on the shore or a freaking tsunami. It does feel like waves, and I agree. I feel like forgiveness is in pieces, and then you can look at the horizon and be like, oh, look. There were 2 things in your book that seem to be themes that gosh, did I resonate with them? And they are rituals and rants. And I feel like in both of your books, you kind of talk in and out about the power of both ritual and a good old-fashioned rant
Yes.
in your life. So let's start with rituals.
Okay.
And I have this love-hate relationship, I'll just divulge it now, with the word self-care. Because I think everyone wants to be like, oh, take care of yourself, it's fine. And I actually found your discussion about ritual and the power of taking care of yourself daily in your rituals that you keep in your life to feel like a more true version of the world's interpretation of self-care, if that makes sense. So tell me what you mean by ritual.
I think of ritual as you take something you do and you make it like make it a habit. And even the practices to do that become special, and they actually hold you up during hard times. So like maybe one of my rituals is how I make my tea in the morning. I put certain things in it. I let it steep for a certain amount of time. And just the act of making tea becomes ritualized in my life. And so it's like, oh, I can't wait to get up and get tea, you know? And then you have a really hard morning and it's like, I need a cup of tea. Or you have a really good day and it's like, I'm going to make some tea for everybody. It's this realization of just maybe a common thing. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It's a 12-step ritual to get out of bed or something. It's not complicated. But they're things that ground us, that get us back to grateful. You know, that's the thing. Is like, if you can get to grateful, you're fine. If I can get to grateful in the morning, I'm in good shape. So whatever it is, it's like, it makes me feel ready to meet my day, ready to love other people. Then I think it's a good ritual. Mine would be definitely a cup of tea. It usually has something to do with knitting or water or walking. You know, ritual is an intention, and it's something you practice. It's not like people can say, yeah, I do yoga, but really you did it once 10 years ago. And, you know, it's like,
by that definition, then I do yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But it's like, it has to be kind of a ritual, something you practice, ritualizing it. But the other day, so I do knitting, walking, you know, all the basic kind of things. And I was on a walk with my sister, and I'm now learned I don't look when I knit, so I can knit and walk.
Stop. You can knit and walk at
So
the same
I was
time.
at Radnor Lake.
Can you like pat your head and rub your belly at the same time too?
Absolutely, I can. So I was with my sister, and it's kind of a slow walk, but I have the knitting in my pocket, so it just comes out. I've got a whole system because it's ritualized. And I look up and I see an eagle, and I'm like, it's the trifecta. It's, you know, this amazing bird that's a sign, knitting and walking. Like, what could be better?
With someone you love.
With someone I love. Just thinking about it makes me happy.
I can see it. It's all over your physiology.
But wait, what are your rituals?
My rituals? Oh, thank you for the question. I'm a 5 a.m. riser
Mm-hmm.
because I have 4 little kids at home. And so I get up and I move my body. I had an eating disorder for a really long time, and I have found healing in moving for moving's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have what I do each day, and I keep the promise to myself. Whether somebody's knocking on my door and doesn't want me to, whether I don't feel 100%, maybe I'll like bring it back a step, but I always follow through on my promise to myself that I will love myself enough to move, not judging it like I used to, but just loving that my body can. And I
Mhm.
switched working out to being an act of worship where I thank God when I'm in a hard interval or doing something that I wish I wasn't doing, like wanting to cuss because something's really heavy and I don't want to do it. I started praying like, thank you that my body can, because
Yeah.
it won't always be able to. So that's my like worship movement ritual in the morning. And then I have read the Bible through for the last 5 years. And there's something about returning to the same stories every year around the same time of year where it feels like I'm going a little deeper around the mountain every time.
Wow.
Those are my 2 things that I can like. I always say somebody has to go let me read my Bible or I'm going to slap somebody today and I won't be any fun to anyone. So those are my rituals.
But 4 kids and that little, that's awful.
It's all very well. Let me say this, they feel really little. I had 3 kids in 3 years, and then now they're preteen, teen, and I have a little guy still. So they still feel
Aw.
little to me, but it's busy. But I find myself in this season of life, if I'm being honest, doing a lot of things that scare me. Every week, I feel like there's something that I get really nervous about, like speaking in front of crowds or doing a podcast with someone that I respect so much. And these things that you almost don't share that you're nervous when you get to be an adult because people are like, why are you nervous? Then don't do it, right? And I'm a big believer of if you're not doing something that scares you, you're probably playing it a little too safe.
Mm.
But I would love to ask, you've done a lot of things that I think a lot of people would think are really scary.
Mm.
Working with genocide victims in Rwanda and starting social enterprise and growing. And even the hardest, I think, is just being true about your story
Mm.
and leaving space for other people to share their trauma, whether it triggers you and it's hard in that moment or not. That's hard work. So do you have any rituals before you do something that feels hard or scary that maybe they're not every day, but that help you?
I would say that the thing that brings me back to myself the most is water.
Mm.
That like if I'm getting ready, maybe this week I'm doing 2 weddings, I'm speaking to a group, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z on top of that and preach maybe. And it's like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Oh my Lord, I can't figure out like where I'm actually going to be present. That's what makes me nervous. I don't want to just dance through it all. I want to be present.
Okay, what about rants? I love that you wrote about how rants are a powerful part of your life. And you even shared a story about your husband trying to fix the situation mid-rant. One time you're like, I am ranting. Please give space and recognize what this is.
Rant. I don't want you to
Rant. So talk a little bit about just like the very human fact that every once in a while you just need a rant.
You know what I love is that when you can name it, it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the other day I had in my mind a rant with this. I really hate people who try to direct 4-way stops. I know how a 4-way stop works. You know, I've been driving a very long time, and I was like, I'm going to rant for like, give myself 60 seconds to rant. And then by the end of it, it's funny. It's like, who cares if you did that? But it's just, it's that thing that comes, a rant to me is something that comes up when somebody like, this is something that drives me crazy. And it's not that interesting and it's not that big a deal, but you just got to let it out or have somebody that will listen and say, oh, it drives me crazy too.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go, yep, okay.
I journal those. I write them because if I hear myself speak, sometimes I'm like, oh, pull yourself together. But if I write them, I don't have to hear it. And then
Right.
nobody judges it.
Well, and
including
it's
myself.
kind of like in the scheme of things, it's nothing, right?
Mhm.
It's the laundry. It's the way people put dishes in a dishwasher.
Oh my
It's the
gosh,
way
yes.
that like no one's ever changed a toilet paper roll in my whole house except me ever in the history of humankind. And it's nothing. So it's like, don't take it that seriously, but it's really fun to every now and then say,
Oh, You're speaking to my soul. Okay. One other thing we have in common, although I think that you are definitely more advanced in your craft than I am, is believing that creativity and the power of crafting can save the world. I mean, like I said, I lived with my mom. I was back and forth between my mom and dad's house. I love them both so dearly. My mom grew up with nothing. We had nothing. So she made everything. I didn't purchase a Halloween costume until I was 12, and then I really wanted a Cinderella costume, and that's a whole other story. It broke her heart, but she made everything. We did all our Christmas cards together.
I want to say we made everything, but I always got false nails. I always got lead press on nails because that's really all I wanted for Halloween was lead press.
Nice.
And so she would let me get those, but we didn't have anything either. But it's like, I don't mind you if you make the costume if I can get the nails.
The nails. Oh, you are a woman after my own heart. And my mom would teach me like the self-care, like the rituals. We would just make them ourselves. We didn't go get stuff. We just did it. We would put on music. I remember we would listen to Bonnie Raitt. Let's give them something to talk about, and it was the two of us in our apartment, and we would clean every week, and then we would craft what we needed to craft or cook what we needed to cook. And so I think your upbringing gave you a lot of context for being thrifty and making everything, but you really are kind of on a mission to save the world through crafting, piece by piece.
Creating as being part of the healing of the world. I've been in refugee camps, and I think it'd be really inappropriate to say, let me hear the story of how you left Syria. Let's hear that trauma. People don't want to necessarily talk about stuff. You spend a week in a camp and you are beginning a justice enterprise with women, and they start, whatever it is for this particular group, it was weaving welcome mats. And we were using the life vests that they use. We just, sat there for a week, and people are ripping the vests, and the women start talking to each other and ranting about things in the camp. And then they're still ripping vests, and then they're sharing some memories. And eventually they get to kind of the hard part of why they had to have those life vests in the first place. But it's women talking to each other and also being super practical and functional, which is important, especially as a refugee. You want to be pretty practical and efficient.
Yeah.
And so I think it's not setting up a separate trauma group, but creativity becomes part of the mental health healing that needs to happen. And at the same time, it's offering them a way to get their kids what they need, to provide enough money to get a decent attorney so you can begin the process of being relocated, all those things. So I love it in that way. And then I also love like any group. I can go to any group in the U.S. and it's like, hey, we're going to do this talk today, and we're also going to make bracelets. And everybody's like, I don't really want to make a bracelet. And you bring out these amazing beads, and even like kind of the volcanic rock beads that can hold the oil, and say, you can make this for anybody. This is a high valued bracelet. And it's just, you string it on this string, but at the end of it, we're going to share who we're making it for. And then people will start making them, and you can hear the conversation start while people make bracelets and about who they're making it for and who they love. And they feel super proud. I'm talking about men, women, everybody. It doesn't matter because the beads are beautiful we use. And you make something beautiful with your hands, and it gets you excited. And it's like, I can't wait to give this to my wife. I can't wait to give this to my friend. And I love that in the process of making, we remember we're creative and beautiful and lovely.
Well, and you teach people crafts that are sustainable, that they can make a good wage with all around the world. And then you even decorate with the crafts here at Thistle Farms. I didn't even realize you were in the studio today because I was so taken with the quilts in the other room. Will you talk about the quilts that you have on display here?
Sure. That's a project we started about 2.5, 3 years ago called the Remnant Project. And it's the idea of telling a textile history of some of the first acts of violence the women know. And it's a way to educate a lot of people about that story and to put, a visual with some of the scars that people never get to see. But also a reminder that you piece it together and it becomes something beautiful. And there's life after that trauma and all those things too. And so we have 12 quilts now, and there's, I think, 7 different countries have participated in it. And we're going to keep going and, remind the world that this is still going on, but also that the journey of healing is stunning. It's stunning. And that's what I want people to feel when they see it.
Love that. I would love to give you space because I've heard about Thistle Farms for years. And I know a lot of people I know and love have great respect. But what is something you're working on right now or that you haven't gotten the chance to talk about as much as you wish you do, that you wish people knew about that you're doing at Thistle Farms?
Well, I would say that I think people don't realize that Thistle Farms is a pretty powerful voice, not only in working with women who are survivors of trafficking, addiction, but we're also really good at what we make, and we distribute around the country. We're the largest justice entrepreneurial program run by women survivors in the United States. And I wish sometimes people took us more seriously as a voice in the world of business that is based on love, like a love business. We are a mission with a business, and we're doing pretty well. And, so many people say like, oh my gosh, I love what you do. It's so inspiring. And then they go buy their soap at Target, and I love Target. I don't have anything against Target. I give it up every year for Lent. I love Target. So it's not about that, but it's about like, if this is something that inspires you and you see the value in it and how we have learned the alchemy of how you take a candle and turn it into a house, how you take body oil and turn it into education for children. We can do that. That happens. But we need people to support and be a part of it and see it as, wow, they could even do more if people would really support them. And we should be much bigger business than we are, in my opinion. And I don't get to talk about that because I need to talk about gratitude.
Sure.
But I do think, I want us to be seen as a successful entrepreneurial business venture.
I love that. Well, and that's what Spence and I are all about. That's what our foundation is about, is all about empowering entrepreneurship, because there's something about the power of small business. Oh, by the way, it's the greatest employer of people across the country is small businesses, right? But also entrepreneurs remember where they came from.
Yes.
They go back home and they educate and they take care of their own. And so I happen to agree with you that I think entrepreneurship, these ventures, what you're doing in each individual country, each product line, has the chance to change the whole world through one enterprise at a time, one set of skills being given to one group of people at a time. And so that's the stuff that gets me out of bed when it's 4:45 and I'm afraid and need to dunk myself in water.
Yes.
And
Go
you're doing
jump
it.
in the water. Listen, you're doing it, and you are so kind to invite me on this, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you for being here.